Hey everybody, John Brown back again here today to talk about Creation and Control, one of the big expansions for Netrunner. If you have the base game, and I talked about in my first video in this series about if you should buy Netrunner, you may have noticed that, yeah, you start out with each faction, and then you throw in neutral cards, and you have a starter deck. You have up to 15 influence to change around, throw other stuff in, which is fine, but it doesn't allow you to really change the way the faction plays. Each of the data packs come in six of them make a cycle. There are 2 cycles out. They're in the middle of the third one now. Add a bunch of cards, or a few cards for each faction, whereas in the big expansions, add cards to one faction on the runner and one for the corp. This expansion adds to the shapers on the runner side and to HB on the corp side. So if there's a faction you really like, then this gives you a lot of options. And that's a big thing for this game because, like for example, in the base game, you're only playing with the agendas, say, that your faction has, or if you're the shapers. In general, you're playing a slower, bigger rig sort of game. And these really kind of blow up your preconceptions and allow you to play those 2 factions in a very different way. It doesn't add any other, it adds a few neutral cards, but it doesn't add any cards to any other faction. So it's the 2 different ways that they're doing expansions right now. So let's look at what's in this, and we're not going to go over all the cards in it, just to give you an idea of what's in there, and hopefully help you make a decision on if you're getting into Netrunner, where you want to start expanding off of the base set. One of the big things that Netrunner's like in the base game is variety of the type of identity you can play. So here's some options for HB. This one, I'd like to see somebody make a good deck with, but your hero size is equal to your credits. That sounds interesting, but extremely dangerous. I don't know how good that is. Here's one that you cannot use Jinteki cards, but you notice here, and here's something the expansions also get into. So in the base game, all your cards have only 15 influence. This one has 22, but it has a drawback. You can't put Jinteki cards in here, and your opponent will know, you're not going to have snares and things like that. But you can throw in a lot of other stuff from other factions. Here's an interesting one that basically allows you to, in your opening hand, play up to 3 ice, and then draw back up to 5. So the ability only triggers right at the start of the game, but it is a pretty powerful ability. If you have a deck with a lot of ice, you end up with 3 ice in your hand, you can put out 3 ice, draw 3 cards. It's almost like you get 6 free clicks at the beginning of the game. And then more agendas is obviously something that these factions need. So here's one that after you finish this one allows you to create another server and put cards out in the server protecting it. So again, building these big HB rigs. This one, whenever the runner suffers at least 1 brain damage, do 1 net damage. So here's a little bit more attack-oriented one. Here's one that allows you to use 2 clicks to gain 3 money after you've done it, so get your economy going a little bit. Here's a really interesting one. When you score it, place 3 agenda counters on it, and then you can use a res by a red piece of ice and add and the run to it. And so again, you can, maybe some big ice the opponent can click through. Now you put an extra thing on there, and now they can't. So it's a 5-3, so hard to score, but potentially pretty big benefit. So there's their agendas and their new identities. And then, of course, they have a lot of interesting things. So here's one that HB a lot of time has things that let them get extra actions. So it can be advanced when it's unres, not after you res it. But, you can use one of these to get an extra action. So, here's helping with maybe fast advance or scoring those big ones, getting more actions, but you can only use these tokens once per turn. Here's something that, basically is going to stop a runner from getting through. You install it as an upgrade, and then you can res it. And you basically prevent something from being, a subroutine from being broken. So it could end a run or, do some other damaging effects, and then the card goes away. Here's an interesting one. It's a unique one, but place a power counter on it every time you install a card and then trash it for a bunch of money. So if you have this behind a lot of ice, you can install a lot of cards, again, get those big massive rigs that HB likes to do, and then get a lot of money for it. And again, here's just one of their examples of ice. Similar, they have a lot of 2.0 things that, again, you can use clicks to break through, and this is an interesting one. You can use 2 clicks to break through 2, so you actually have to use 4 if you want to click all the way through it. Or you could use 2 and then a breaker to get through 1, but it is a base strength 7, which is pretty interesting. So, HB does what it does, but, it has a lot more interesting tools, a lot more interesting IDs and ways to score. And then there's some neutral cards, a nice solid just end to run for strength of 4. Not a bad one. Here's kind of a mini toll booth. You have to pay 2 if you can't break the subroutine, so on and so forth. The shaper cards with the runners get in this set. So here's some new identities. The first ICU counter is a code gate. So they're good at breaking code gates, and you can. And then of course they can set up more horizontally instead of vertically, where they set up a lot of ice spread, going upwards instead of outwards. But if you're playing a deck that likes to play kind of horizontally, where they have a lot of weakly protected servers too, this could be pretty powerful and interesting. Maybe the most interesting one here, and since it is kind of a powerful ability, she only has 10 influence here. Why does the professor only have 1 influence? Well, you look at his ability, the first copy of each program in this deck does not count against your influence limit. So you can throw of one-ofs of all different kinds of stuff, and then maybe 2 data suckers or something to cost 1. A really interesting card here. Maybe if I get better at the game, I'd like to try to make a deck out of that, but I'm not good enough yet. So here's another identity. Whenever you install a program from your heap, draw a card. Really interesting, and there are a bunch of cards in this set that allow the shapers to do some interesting things like that, but we'll get to that. Here's an interesting card I wanted to mention, and again, a good player probably will play it better than I would right now, but a potentially powerful ability, make her an HQ, if successful, you can rearrange ice. You have to keep the same number of ice in each server, but this could really mess over a deck where the order of the ice is important, or you can put ice on servers where you want to get to. Really mess over your opponent. Here's the Monolith, a new console. It costs 18, but it gives you 3 memory and lets you install a bunch of programs at a discounted rate. I don't know if it's worth it or not, probably depends on the deck, but certainly interesting. Now, let's get to self-modifying code. This is, in my opinion, one of the best cards in the set and really interesting. It takes 2 memory, but you can spend 2 money and trash it and search your stack for a program and install it. So, this allows, one of the cards in here that allows the shapers to be a little bit quicker of a faction. In the base game, they're really slow, but there's some things in here that could potentially change the way that they play. And then here's one that, again, allows you to go in and, trash something and then install a program from your grip or heap. So, equal to the cost or lower. So here's one of the things that's really interesting about this. If you're splashing Fem, the 9-cost card that lets you put a token on something and make it easier to get by, you can trash it and then play it out of your heap, because obviously the same cost, the same card, and put it on another one. So lots of just one thing you can do is scavenge, but lots of interesting things. Here's a really interesting code breaker. When you play it, you put a certain amount of money on it, and then basically you can get through stuff that's equal to that strength. You can maybe use it in conjunction with data suckers to bring things down. If they have a lot of ice that's the same strength though, or you get a couple of these out potentially, you can really get through ice efficiently unless they have a lot of different values on their ice. The expansions also have some neutral cards, so let's just look at one of each here. Let's look at this Corp card that allows you to use a click and a money to search R&D for a piece of ice, reveal it, and add it to HQ. So, this is something you can get a piece of ice out and then play something, and of course the runner doesn't know if that's the ice you got or not, but adds to the mind games a little bit. It's an interesting card. Here's a neutral card for the runners I really think is interesting. An event, you pay 2 and trash this, and play an event from your heap paying its cost. So certain events that you want to get back out, whether it be, account siphon or all different kinds of things, this is potentially a really powerful card for the runners and one I like quite a bit. Alright everybody, so that's a look at creation and control. Just real quick, there's a lot of other cards. The goal of this video wasn't to show you everything, but just to give you an idea of the differences between the big and small expansions. Spend a little bit more time in this video talking about that, because this is the first video not about the base game. Here's the thing, if you're starting out as a player, maybe you want to get some data packs after the base game with some cards you think that look interesting, so that you can flesh out each of the different decks well. If there's factions you really like though, the big expansions are a really good way to really expand that faction. One of the shortcomings with just the base game, obviously you have the same agendas you have to work with, you have the same IDs you have to work with. So the big boxes really give you a lot of options for each faction. And especially I think for this expansion in general really changes the shapers a lot, can help the shapers be faster, do a lot more interesting things than just set up a slow big rig like in the base game. And again, HB has a lot of interesting agendas, some cool cards, not that HB is bad, but can change the way you play more so than any one individual data pack. Now if you get a lot of data packs though, again, you're spreading out the different factions, give you different options. So It's up to you where you want to start with expansions, but I definitely suggest if there's a faction you want to play as, the big expansions definitely provide in giving you a lot of different ways to play it. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed that. I'll be back again soon with a look at Unearned Profit. The big expansion gives you cards for Gentechian criminals and allows a lot of different play options. And then I'm thinking I'll probably do one video each for each of the two cycles of data packs that are out and show you some stuff in there. So thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Alright, bye.